While tutoring ELL students whose L1 was Spanish, I realized the difficulty in deciphering which pronunciation of the ED sound for regular past tense verb formation was correct. As an English speaker, we take for granted our experience with language, based on what sounds best and by what we have heard. When confronted with the possibility of sounds, t, t, id, or ed, I was completely dumbfounded by my lack of understanding in my own language. Within this lesson, I will touch base on the history of past tense verb formation. Later on, I will tackle approaches to take in order to decipher the correct pronunciation of the ed ending. This will include a brief lesson on voiced and voiceless sounds to begin with, and then moving on to grammatical rules that provide concrete instances for use to choose the correct final sound, either t, t, or id. The regular form ed has actually not always been the regular past tense verb form, nor was it regulated overnight. This was a slow evolution of the language, beginning around 1592 and working all the way until 1780, when it finally became the regular formation. Prior to the regular ed form, there were alternate forms ending with either t, d, or de. That being said, the ed form was pronounced id, after not only just t and d, but also after other consonants in words that might sound weird to us now, such as strowed and walked. After 1780, ed became the invariant lexical spelling for the regular past tense form. In other words, although the spelling does not change, the written form ed corresponds not to a single pair of sounds, such as id, but to a morpheme for past tense that can be said in 3 different ways: t, t, and id. And this is where things get confusing for language learners and even for us who have grown up with the language but might not know the rules behind it. Now, before we can jump right into the rules, there are some bases we must first cover: voiced and voiceless sounds. The understanding of these key terms is crucial in deciphering the correct ending pronunciation for regular past tense verbs. First, we will begin with voiced sounds. A voiced sound uses the vocal cords in order to produce a vibration or humming sound within the throat. The voiced sounds in the English language include b, g, v, v, z, j, m, n, ul. These sounds also include all of the vowels. To differentiate between whether a sound is voiced or voiceless, you can place your finger on your throat and pronounce a sound. If the sound is voiced, you will be able to feel a vibration in your throat. For example, when pronouncing the letter L, ul, your finger will be able to feel a vibration. Now take this time to practice some of the voiced sounds. Voiceless sounds do not create vibrations in your throat, and the sound then comes from the mouth area instead. Examples of voiceless sounds in the English language are p, k, th, f, s, sh, ch. For example, while pronouncing the P sound, p, you will not feel a vibration in your throat, but rather a movement of air. The sound is being produced with your mouth rather than your vocal cords. You can now use this time in order to practice some of the voiceless sounds. Verbs ending in voiceless sounds p, k, th, f, s, sh, ch are pronounced with a voiceless t past tense ending. Not only is this t voiceless, but it is also unaspirated. This means that the t does not create an airflow outward from the mouth and that the tongue only gently makes contact with the alveolar ridge. Because the verbs in the orange box all end with voiceless sounds, their ending will take the form of a voiceless, unaspirated t, such as stopped, walked, unearthed, coughed, missed, crushed, and breached. Verbs that end in voiced sounds b, g, v, z, j, n, and l are pronounced with a voiced d past tense ending. Because the verbs in the orange box all end with voiced sounds, their ending will take the form of a d sound, such as sobbed, mugged, bathed, moved, grazed, smudged, crammed, manned, clanged, steered, and bawled. The final rule actually only refers to verbs that end in the letters T or D. When a verb ends in either of these letters, the ed regular past tense form will be pronounced with the id sound. I believe this is actually the most confusing part because at first glance, this id sound appears very similar to the ed sound because of the spelling used with ed. This is a slight yet very big difference, especially for the language learning students that I tutor. They automatically jump to the ed sound rather than the id sound because of its literal translation. For example, the two words did and dead have very different sounds and very different meanings. Their id and ed endings can be easily disguised at the end of verbs, making wanted with an id sound become a very strange wanted with an ed sound. Keep this slight difference in check and suddenly you will sound like a native English speaker. Because the verbs in the orange box all end with either a T or D, their ending will take the form of an id sound, such as dented, crafted, ended, and wedded. With this short video, you will now be a master at deciphering between the three different sounds for the ed regular past tense verb ending. Although the history is not critical to learning this differentiation, it is helpful in exposing the ever-changing language that we speak. A norm to us will not always and hasn't always been the norm. By focusing on whether the final verb sound is voiced, voiceless, or a T or D, you can now determine whether the ed takes the form of a voiceless t, a voiced d, or an id sound. Thank you.